There was so much to share in part one of this dynamic experience at one church at Bethel's family. Let's review. This is where we ended in part one.
Tonight, I want to call somebody who's had an opportunity to experience God and hear about the great things of God, but you've been wrestling with the walls you live in, and God has said it's time to come out, lean into what I'm doing, because the move is going to happen with you or without you. The transition is going to happen with you or without you. It's better to get with the program than to get run over in it.
It's time for part two of Women That Break Through on Intensified Life TV with Dr. Lakeisha B.
Haven't we learned anything from living through a pandemic? Haven't we learned anything about how church has had to change, shift, pivot, be different? And our very lives have to live in a certain space of openness and flexibility to hear what God is saying and doing. And when God brings something into your experience, it doesn't matter if it doesn't look the way you thought it should or feel the way you thought it should. Listen, listen, listen. Hear what the Lord is doing. Perceive, Rahab heard the same news that others heard, but she had it mixed with a certain amount of confidence and faith. How do I know this? It's in the book. It's in the Bible. Hebrews tell us that she had faith. That's why she hid the spies. You see, faith is not just what we have goosebumps about and makes us feel good and shout. Faith is literally acting on what God said as if it's already done. Faith is action, people. It's not just a warm, fuzzy feeling in your spirit. Faith says, because I believe what God said, I'm going to live on what God said, and I'm not going to let what I see change what I believe God said. So we see that Rahab's confidence comes from a place of hearing what God is doing and placing her belief, her faith in that, because that's how faith comes. It comes by hearing the word of God. And she got a word about this God who was bigger and greater than anything she had ever seen or experienced before. And instead of retreating back into the wall, she said, I'm going to come out of this. I've got to break through. I've been living on the margins anyway. I've been excluded from a lot of things anyway. I already got a label. They already don't like me. I already feel like I'm an outcast. Why not get with God and get with the program? They already talk about me. Why not get with God? They already don't understand me. Why not get with God? They already think I'm crazy. Why not get with God? I want to help somebody who's been teetering on the wall of your own mental struggles, and what's in your spirit is that God says it's time to break through, break through. You talk about being confident, but where is your faith? Have you heard enough to convince you God is worth it? Are you going to shrink back, or you're going to fall back, or you're going to retreat into the wall, or are you going to take action because of your faith? Confident women do just that. They break through their own mental barriers and they say yes and lean into God. So she's a confident woman, and if we're honest, we have to really also deal with the fact that Rahab heard about God. She discerned divine activity and cultivated her faith over her fear. She's very honest there. She says clearly that we all got scared. That's the Keisha Barnett version. We heard what God was doing for you all. Y'all did some crazy mad stuff and God is on your side. We got scared, but I decided I'm going to get with God. What is God showing you? What is God saying to you? What is God stirring in your spirit? How are you being challenged to come out of the wall places to get with what God is doing? Rahab shows us that this confidence turned into some courage. You see, courage is not that you act because you have no fear. Courage is when you act even in spite of your fear. Courage is when, in spite of the pain, in spite of what might be distracting, courage says, I'm going to take action and not be deterred by the danger or the fear or the pain. I've got to do something. That's where we know she had real faith, because real faith says I've got to take action, and the action will not be deterred by my fear. So while you are confident women, I wonder if there are any courageous women. I wonder if you are courageous enough to stand on God's word and take action based on what God has done in your life and what God has said. I know you might get a label. I know it might mean that you'll be misunderstood. I know it might put you in danger, but there are certain things that I tell you, God is worth it. You see, I learned a little while ago that there are different types of courage. Some of you are courageous and you have to do something different, and it will require a physical type of courage. When you're going through health crisis, but you have to endure. Some of you will have to face some social courage because you will be labeled, ostracized. Sometimes it's emotional courage to face your emotional baggage. Stop suppressing it. Stop calling it something it's not. Stop denying it, but face the facts. See a therapist. Get some support. It takes courage. Some of you will face some issues that require an intellectual courage because you will think outside the box. You're going to push the envelope and think about things nobody has thought of, and it will require something different of you because not everybody's going to understand. You're a visionary. You don't think on the regular level. You don't think about things the plain and ordinary way, and so you're going to have to trust God and have courage to put that idea out there. To do it differently because we're in a new day. Have courage. Some of you will have emotional and moral challenges where you have to do the right thing when everybody else is doing wrong. And definitely spiritual courage. To stand on what you know is right about the person and character of God, even when you don't see in the natural what you think you ought to see. Physical, emotional, social, intellectual, moral, and spiritual courage means that you will make some moves and you will not be moved by fear. How do I know that this is what Rahab demonstrates for us? Because Rahab made a move. She hid some spies when it could have cost her her life. Because of what she heard and knew about God's activity and this movement coming her way, rather than shrink back into her wall, she took action and she did something courageous. She hid some men and then she stood up to those who came. I'm not condoning that she may not have told the complete story the right way. But therein is where we can find our test, because sometimes we will have to be disobedient to those who want us to deny what God is doing in our lives. Come on, you know that's why we're able to sit where we want to sit, because Rosa Parks said, no, I'm not going to go to the back of the bus. The law said one thing, but Rosa said another. I need you to understand there are times when you're going to have to stand on what God is doing, what God has said, and it may cost you something, but courageous women say, I'm willing to do it. Where's your courage, sisters? I know it looks big. I know it looks intimidating. I know it might cost you some networking possibilities. I know it might cost you that promotion. I know it might cost you a relationship. But where is your courage? If you really become a woman of faith and confidence, let that confidence be transitioned into a courageous act. Rahab is teaching us, if you really have confidence in what you've seen and heard about the Lord, you'll act on it. She hid the spies. And then I'm going to say something that I know that somebody needs to hear. When Rahab talked to the spies, she had some big, bold requests. Rahab hid them, and then she said, listen. See, she's a businesswoman. She knows how to negotiate. Because I was kind to you, I need you to be kind to me. Oh my God. This blessed me because some of us, we get courageous in our acts, A-C-T, acts. But we need to also be courageous in our asks. You need to open up your mouth and let your voice be heard. You've been whimpering and quiet too long, thinking that you don't want to rock the boat. You've been silent, and now is the time for you to stand up and ask for what you want. Make some big, bold moves and have some big, bold asks. Rahab speaks up for herself, and she says, it's here in the text, she says, listen, give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father, my mother, my brothers, my sister, all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. I want to empower somebody to know that if you believe God, then ask for big things. If you know that you have your confidence rooted in the person, the power, the majesty, the greatness of our God, ask for big things. Don't shrink back and don't let anybody intimidate you. You know your value. You see, Rahab knew she had done something valuable, so she had the qualification to ask for some things. And so she had done what she needed to do. She could go boldly and say, I've done this for you. I need you to do this for me. Sometimes women, we are so loving and we are so giving and we are so accommodating and we keep piling on the niceties and we don't want to ask and speak up when it's time to speak up. God is telling you tonight, you need to stop being a doormat. Stand up and let your voice be heard. Ask for what you need, and you don't have to limit it to the people around you. I'm telling you to look up with your faith. Ask God for what you need. Ask bold, big prayers. Ask deep, wide prayers. Ask for what you need and keep on asking. Don't shut up. Don't shrink back. If you want to break through, you've got to ask for some things. And don't do it little, and don't do it just for you. She said, I want my mama and my daddy and my brothers and my sisters. I want my cousins. I want Pookie and them. Ask for what you want. Because confident, courageous women, they break through to another level. They don't see it's not just about me. I've got some people connected to me. So I've got to ask. Make some big requests. Let the voices be heard. Let your voices be heard. Let your voices be heard. Because somebody's life will be saved because you spoke up. Because you cried out, because you were wise enough to negotiate. So she was courageous enough to make some bold moves, but she had some big asks. I wonder if there's anybody courageous enough to ask for the big stuff. It might cost you your reputation, but if you know your value, if you know your worth, if you know what you've contributed, if you know how you are important to the kingdom, you ask for some big things. And you expect to get. Ooh, Jesus. I'm trying to keep it right. She said, give me a sure sign. I want to see something. I'm not just going to take your word, man. I want you to give me something. Give me a sure sign. And she received just what she asked for. Now, I know in this text we're familiar with, again, Rahab. And we like to talk about the prostitute Rahab. But I just want to lift again that there's a little bit of Rahab in all of us. Just because we are women who sometimes are on the margin, making less than our counterparts sometimes. Women on the margin, looked down upon because of our age or stage in life. Sometimes we are locked into our own mentality and the walls we've created and we live in. But tonight I'm just believing that God says, I want some women to break through. Come on and hear what God has done and believe with your confidence that it will be by your faith and courageous acts that God will then make you contagious. You see, when Rahab got that confidence, that faith, and then she started making those bold asks and those big moves, and it turned into this courageous thing. Her courage, I believe, is what made it contagious so that her family could be blessed. You see, the definition of contagious, it means that another thing will be impacted directly, right? Directly impacted. If it's contagious, that means you're going to catch it if you're directly in connection with me, right? Direct impact. We're in close proximity. That means that whatever I've got, it's going to influence, impact, maybe get inside of you. Now, here is what I thought was beautiful about the text, because Rahab give her a sure sign, and they gave her a red cord to put on the window. I was toiling about calling this sermon like a woman, a word at a window. Or woman, some walls and a window, because you see, she had to put the red cord on the window as a sign. They said, surely if we come back and we don't see this, then the blood is on your head. Everybody connected to you has to be in the house. Everybody connected to you has to be in if they're connected to you, they've got to be directly in contact with you in the house. And if they're going to be saved, they've got to be in the house, stay there. And when we see this red cord, we'll know that we're going to pass over this house because everything in this house is covered. I'm telling you, when it's contagious, because, you know, just think about it. Rahab had to go tell her mama, her daddy, her brothers and sisters, listen, I hear them spies, but come on in this house. She had to go talk to some people who only heard, just as she heard, about what the Lord had done, but she had to convince them, come on in this house. She had to go tell them, I know we've heard that they have demolished everybody else, but if you come on in this house, you're going to be saved. Can you imagine Daddy asking, Rahab, what you talking about? Daddy, don't worry about it. I got a red cord. I got a promise hanging out the window that if you connect it to me, the blessing that is mine is going to cover you because we under the red cord. It's contagious. It's contagious. It means that if you connect it to me, just come on in the house. And what I agreed, what I got by asking is going to cover all of us if we just get under the red cord. Listen, I want to tell you before I sit down that your confidence and your faith is important. But don't just say I have faith and I'm confident. Let it lead you to some courageous acts. Take courage, my sister. Don't just talk about it when it's nice and cute in here in church and you got some other sisters who can say amen. No, you've got to step outside the walls and put some action to your faith. It doesn't mean you're not scared. It doesn't mean it might not cost you, but you do it scared anyway. You go for it anyway because there are some walls keeping you and those connected to you from living in the fullness of what God has for their lives. So if you're ready to live outside of the walls, then you need to understand that what you have in you is contagious, because when you start moving in the courageous way, when you start living outside the walls, you're going to start influencing other people, and they're going to see a woman who used to be on the margin is now leading the way. Hey, she's leading the way. She's got some other people who are covered Because she was courageous. Because she dared to believe that God was doing something different, and she didn't shrink back into the walls of whatever society told her she had to be marginalized and lived in. No, she leaned into what God was doing and said, I heard something that changed my fear, and now I have faith, and I want to get with God because they're already talking about me. So let me just cover my people who connected to me. It's contagious. And if you are the one that God has called out to make the difference in your family, in your circle, in your neighborhood, in your church, what are the walls that need to come down? What are the spaces and places that you need to live beyond the walls and break through? Because there are some people who need to come on in the house. And they only gonna get in when there's a woman who's willing to break through. They only gonna hear about it when there's a woman who's willing to step out in some courage and do the bold thing and ask the bold prayers. It's only gonna happen, they're only gonna be covered when they learn about the woman who knows her value and who will use her voice and speak up and not be deterred. They're only gonna be saved when they see you doing that thing. So where are the courageous women? Where are the confident and contagious women? If you're contagious, then you ought to show some signs, because what is in you is going to affect somebody else. And it's not just about what you do and say right here. It's about how you live out there. See, when we come in here, this is like the pep rally, and we just gonna stir each other up a little bit and remind each other, I'm contagious. I've got something on the inside that got to get on the outside, and I'm not gonna let my walls keep me from doing what God says. So I've got to break through. And I do believe tonight there's somebody who wants to say, yes, it's time. Maybe you've been retreating to what you know, living in what's familiar, comfortable in the walls that you created or the walls that other people put around you. But God has souls to save. God has lives to change. God has a move that you can participate in or miss because you won't allow yourself to break through. Tonight, I'd like the privilege of praying for the women who are ready to say, I have some bold moves to make. I have some bold things to ask of God. I'm ready to break through because the walls have not served me well. I see God, I hear God, I know that there is something stirring in the divine, in the heavenlies, and I'm ready to be a part of it. I don't want to miss what God is doing. But I've got to get outside of my walls. I've been living there, even when I didn't want to. But tonight we can be freed. Tonight I want you to take courage. Tonight I want it to be the night that you make a change. I'm asking you to bow your head, and only those who are ready to say yes. I hear you saying to me, God, that this is now. It has to happen now. I'm not asking you to do, ladies, listen, I'm not asking you to do this because I need to see you. But I believe with all my heart that when we make a move, it means something. And I want it to be symbolic for you, moving outside of the wall. Stop living in the walls and break through, because you've heard enough of what God has done. You've seen enough. You've experienced enough. Even if you're scared about the outcome, it's better to go in faith with God than to live in walls of fear. If you know the Spirit of God is speaking to you, then stand where you are.
If this message has blessed your life as much as it blessed me to share it with you, then leave a comment and more importantly, share it with someone else. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can get updated content and stay connected. This is Intensified Life TV with Dr. Lakeisha B.